In this video I am showing how I did the etching to create the three-dimensional artwork on the Reaver blade. Prior to starting the video I have already shaped the blade, painted it white, and drawn on my artwork with pencil. I am scratching off all of the white paint below the ricasso. I am being very careful to keep clean lines around the ricasso and to clearly define the runes. Most of the fine detail work is done with a steel needle that I have set into a makeshift wooden handle. Once the runes are clearly outlined I can use steel tools with larger tips to speed up the resist removal. Because I have such large areas where I have scratched off the resist I am going back and using a Q-tip with nail polish remover to assure all the paint is removed. I am being careful to stay away from the runes. It is now time for the initial etch which will bite into all the steel below the ricasso except for the runes. I am placing a heat plate with a warm water bath below my etching container which will help keep the ferric chloride close to 100 degrees during the etching process. After about an hour in the ferric chloride I use a brush to clean off the steel residue that has built up on the blade during etching before returning the blade to the ferric chloride for another 30 minutes. I am removing the blade from the etchant after a total of 90 minutes. This is longer than I would usually do a single etch, but I am looking for deep etching surrounding the runes. The blade is then washed in water and baking soda to neutralize the acid. Now that the bottom of the blade is completed, I begin to remove paint around my drawing of the Reaver knoll on the ricasso. For the next etch I am only removing the resist around the knoll and not on the foreground. I want the area behind the knoll to appear the farthest in the distance when the blade is complete. Once all of the paint is removed from around the knoll, I scratch in some of the detail lines on the knoll's shield, as the shield will be the next farthest back portion of the artwork. These are before and after pictures of the second etch. I am now moving to the removal of the paint from the rocks upon which the knoll is standing. I am very careful around the feet of the knoll in order to preserve the detail of the knoll's toenails. You will note that I scratched in the lines upon the rocks prior to the second etch so they would be etched a little deeper into the steel than the rocks will be in this third etch. I am removing all the resist from the shield for the third etch as I want it to have the same depth level as the rocks. The blade just before the third etch. In preparation for the fourth etch I remove the resist from all of the knoll's extremities. You will note that I still have small amounts of resist on the knoll's finger and toenails in order to help them stand out in the final product. I am also scratching in the details of the knoll's face at this point. I plan to have those details go through a couple of etching cycles. Before and after shots for the fourth etch. In preparation for the fifth etch I remove the resist from the bottom piece of the knoll's clothing. This is done so that it will stand out from the rest of the clothing and help to create the three-dimensional image. At this point I decide that I need to remove the resist from the decorative pattern at the bottom of the ricasso. Although I want this piece to stick outward from the rest of the blade, you always need to be looking at thin strips of resist and be certain that you remove them before they begin to deteriorate from previous etches. I use nail polish remover to remove this paint since there are no other details in proximity. The blade prior to the 5th etch. For the 6th etch I remove the resist from the rest of the Gnoll's clothing and all of his armor. Just prior to the 6th etch there is only resist left on the face and a few details I want to stand out. After the 6th etch is complete I remove all of the remaining resist from the blade using nail polish. These remaining features will be the ones that appear the closest in the foreground in the final work. Although there is no resist left, I do a 7th etch in order to smooth out these final features. This final etch is shallow and done for only 10 minutes. The final product prior to sanding. At this point it does not look like much, but wet sanding with 2000 grit sandpaper will quickly begin to reveal the final artwork. How long you sand at this point is a matter of artistic preference. You are sanding off all of the dark residual from the etching process. I prefer to do a fair amount of sanding here as I will be darkening the blade in a later step. Here is a look at the etched artwork. I will be cold bluing the blade and resanding in order to get highlights and shadows to stand out. I apply the cold bluing reagent to the entire blade using a Q-tip. Then I neutralize it using baking soda and water before resanding. The final product after about 2 weeks of work. This video only covered the artistic etching of the Reaver blade. If you liked this video, be certain to watch for the second part in the near future where I will create the hilt furniture for the blade. Thank you for watching, and if you enjoyed this video please click like and subscribe to my channel.